It's my great pleasure to introduce Jonas Kulikauskas. He is a fine artist and photographer, and gosh, I guess about 8 or 9 years ago, he started this project called Yosemite People. That's what he's going to tell us all about today. Jonas is also, I want to mention, on the faculty of Art Center College in Pasadena. This is a book exhibition project, and the book was published, and Jonas was 2017, more or less. The book was published, and it did win a very prestigious award at the International Photography Awards. Took the first place prize for books about people. So that's a notable accomplishment. Also, 33 of the images from this project were accessioned into the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian a few years ago in 2019. That's a really big deal too. The physical exhibition is at the California Museum in Sacramento, although they're not letting anybody in at the moment, but hopefully in the next month or two, things will ease up and they'll be able to open that up. And then Exhibit Envoy will try traveling that exhibition around the state. Jonas, I might add, is joining us today from Lithuania. He's 10 hours ahead of us, and he's working. Has a Fulbright award to work on a project there, which will result in the creation of some art down the road. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Jonas Kulikauskas.
Thank you, David. What a wonderful introduction. Well, I'm very pleased to be here, and I want to thank the Grace Hudson Museum and Amy Cohen. Thank you for joining us from Exhibit Envoy. And I'll just start telling you about how this project came about. Right? I was living at the time in Pasadena, California. Now, this project actually started in the evening of 1999. And that's because, if anyone here remembers, that was the year of Y2K, right? The big global concern that the computers will go on a big glitch and destroy the universe or something like that. And what happened is I was living in Pasadena right by the Rose Bowl, and that's where the thousands and tens of thousands of people convene for the Rose Parade and for the Rose Bowl football game. And I thought, this is not a place I want to be with 100,000 people if things go awry. So what I did is I said, I'm going to go somewhere beautiful, and I'm going to take my New Year's resolutions and have some time for reflection. So I drove out to Zion National Park, of all places. And it was beautiful and dusted with snow. And I thought how great it is to be so alone and being able to experience nature and relax, and there were just no people, you know. And I followed with that trend for the next 14, 15 years. And I thought, I'm ready for a switch. Where else can I go equally or more amazing? And I thought I hadn't been to Yosemite in a long time, so let's try Yosemite National Park. So, you know, I'd like to share my screen now and show you what happened that very first morning. Let's see here. And David, do I have hosting capabilities? There we go. Now I'm hoping everybody can see the screen. What you see here is a bird called the Canary Songster. And why am I showing you this? I wanted to create a small press, a little book publishing project when I published my book, Yosemite People. And I thought I need a little icon for it. And I wanted to share this story about this bird. What this is a toy. It's 100 years old. It's made of brass. And if you see that bottom container, once you fill it with water and you blow through this straw, the beak flaps and the tail flaps and the wings flap, and you get a charming warbling sound like a canary, right? It's such a beautiful old-fashioned toy. And why am I showing you this? This is because in the day, 100 years ago or so, when photographers were photographing families and children, they would take this bird out and make that warbling sound, and they would say to the children, "Smile for the birdie." And so this became the icon for my book publishing company called 1,000 Words Press. And I wanted to share that before we started. But getting back to my first day in Yosemite, this project started when I was sat at the Ahwahnee Hotel. It was 7 a.m. sharp, and that's when they opened. And if you've never been there, this is a historic hotel. It's a 5-star hotel in the wilderness, right? And they have 16-foot vaulted ceilings. It's a registered historic site, architectural site, landmark. And I ordered my oatmeal, and I was the first person there just waiting while the wait staff was getting ready. And if you can imagine, if you look through that window, there's a beautiful meadow out there, the part of the hotel. And if you walked out and looked at the left, you would see Half Dome, right? A huge granite rock, an icon of Yosemite. And if you looked at the window on the right, you would see Yosemite Falls. So I thought, here I am at this World Heritage Site, and it couldn't be more pleasant. And then I got a little annoyed. The wait staff walked right in front of my view, and I thought, oh, great. Couldn't she kind of wait, or couldn't, does it have to be now? But they had their job to do, And this waitress, she threw the tablecloth up in the air, and she did it in such a beautiful, crisp motion. It was so elegant, and she laid it down and started to adjusting it. And what I really felt was I really felt the care she had, for the next person, And I realized, like, this was an instant realization. This is the kind of care that was made for me, for the table where I'm sitting, And I had my camera with me, and I thought, I'm going to take a shot. Now, it hit me. I've got Half Dome on the left, and I've got Yosemite Falls on the right, but I'm taking the picture of a person's back. Why would I do that? How did this person get my attention? And I thought, there's something to this. Like, humanity, in the end, somehow doesn't let us down. And I'm going to run with this theme. I have to remember, I shoot film. I have a 35mm camera, film camera, with me. And I'm not going to see these photos until I get back and until these photos get developed, So I don't know exactly what I have here. So I'm going on a big hunch. And I thought, I'm going to see if I could find more of this type of, lovely humanity. And I'm going to start exploring the park in a different way. So I went for a walk, and I realized and discovered that Yosemite has a village, and Yosemite has a post office, right? And they have everything that is needed to live there. At the time there were 4 million, and now there's about 5 million visitors every year. And during a high season, have about 5,000 people working and living in Yosemite Valley. And I walked, and I ran across the visitor center. And this woman was sitting here, and she's giving, showing examples of her work and whatnot. And this is Julia Parker. She's a master basket weaver, and she's Native American, and she's been at Yosemite more than 50 years as an interpretive demonstrator, ranger. And she recently retired. I know that when I visit Yosemite, even after her retirement, I would bump into Julia Parker. So there's always a chance you'll see her. Now, there were people here long before the gold rush. And the descendants are still in the local area today, still carrying on customs and traditions. Philip Johnson said that. He's an interpretive ranger I met. Philip gives nature walks and tours of the park. He's Native American. He's holding an arrow that he made himself from scratch from the materials from the surrounding area. And he is also the nephew of Julia Parker. So there's this legacy of, you know, people working and sharing their experiences at Yosemite. I'd never considered it, never thought of it. I went for a little drive. I took this photograph right outside my car window, and I thought, oh, that light's amazing. But the stop sign caught my eye, and the arrow caught my eye, and the road and the asphalt and the neatly arranged boulders. And I thought, oh, you know, the light and the forest is so natural. What was this place like before the asphalt? You know, what was it like to walk the grounds of Yosemite before? And I thought of the native people, the indigenous people. So I dedicated this project to the first Yosemite people. For me, that was important. Now, when I got home, I did develop that film, and those are the photos I saw, and I thought, there's something here, I'm gonna make this a project. And typically I'll spend a year or two or sometimes 3 on a project. And I thought, this is a community I wanna capture. I think there's traditions here, and I think that there's culture, and it needs to be done. And so when I do a project like this, I'll set parameters, right? So first I set my gear, and I use a Leica M6, which is a film camera, 35 millimeter, like I mentioned before. And I use a 50 millimeter lens, which is mostly approximates the human eye. And it's a classic sort of street photographer's choice. And I thought, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm a street photographer. I did street photography for 30 years, and I'm going to bring street photography into the wilderness. And what does that mean? I'm going to take photographs that are candid by nature. Nothing's going to be really contrived. It's going to be quick, and I have to be nimble, right? And I have to cover a lot of territory. So I decided I better mark my territory, and I said to myself, this project will only be inside the park. I need to define this project, right? It won't be in Oakhurst, the neighboring town, or Mariposa County. It would only be, you know, in this vicinity. And frequency, if I do this project, I have to do it right. And I'm gonna come once a month, which is about a 6-hour drive for me at the time. And I am going to come for 1 day or 3 days or as much as I can while holding a full-time job. And I have to come for a year, I think, because I need to capture all of the seasons. Can't imagine doing a project on Yosemite and not having snow, you know, or summer moments, things like that. And I wanted to capture the flow of the people, the traffic. You know, is it like Zion? Will it be empty here? Will it be massively full of crowds? And then I thought about special access. And when I typically do my street photography, I don't ask for special access. I'd be in New York, and I wouldn't rent a helicopter to document the Empire State Building. You know, I walk the streets, I go through the boroughs, I go to Brooklyn, I do, you know, sort of well, I want to see people on the streets, you know, in the neighborhoods, and the gritty side of the city. So I thought the same for Yosemite. I'm going to go and follow the people. And I'm going to do the kinds of activities the people are doing. And I won't reach far. It wouldn't be something I typically wouldn't do, but I will, you know, go where the people are. And the subjects are the workers, the rangers, the families, the visitors, and volunteers. There's a real breadth of subjects to cover. So, you know, this presentation is typically very interactive. I have opportunity to ask people questions and talk a little bit about the Yosemite itself. And just wanted to say the way I've organized the photos and the way they're in the book, it's almost as if you're taking a big walk around the park, if you can imagine. You know, a lot of it takes place in the valley because that's I think half of 1% of the area of the park, but it's probably 99.5% of the people, that's where they land, you know. But why don't we talk about Curry Village, because that's where I started. This is a tent village, I think 600 or more tents. And you get a little bit of that dichotomy of the people and the place. And this is the shot I used for the cover of the book. I think it's important to mention a little bit, talk a little bit about it. One of the things is, it takes Half Dome on its ear. There are a lot of famous images of Half Dome. There's Ansel Adams, Carlton Watkins, and Muybridge. But this is a reflection of the puddle in Curry Village, and everything in this photo is actually man-made, right? There's this concrete car, guide and the asphalt, and the gentleman walking through it. And you may not recognize straight away, but this is actually the front desk at the Curry Village, tent village. And these are keys. So, you check in and you get a key, and they have a lot of extras because I got a feeling a lot of people lose them. So, but I'm counting down here 749 tents right there. So. Now I was trying to shoot people a lot, and if I wasn't shooting people, I was shooting presence of man, just like the keys or the road. I wanted to talk about impact of people as well, and make compositions based on that too. And I know we have different kinds of people visiting today. We have visitors from Lithuania, and we have people in New York, and we have photographers, and we have nature lovers. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about everything today. This photo is a good lesson for me as a photographer. I went out shooting, doing my walk, looking for opportunities. And I left for an hour and I found nothing. Sometimes it just, things don't go your way, So I returned back to my tent area, which this is the Curry Village, right outside their guest house or community house. And I caught this image of these sort of generations, the gentleman reading the book and the scout whittling the wood. And the truth is, this boy is my son. I took him on this trip at the time. And I was so grateful he wasn't outside using a tablet, or a little computer game. So I thought, I got to take this picture. And it just sort of spoke to me of, that's part of the charm and part of the, I don't know, even the glory of Yosemite, that people slow down and they find their own spiritual moments. But then you can go into, like I said, Yosemite has all these kinds of things, and there's 9 gift shops, I believe, in Yosemite, and places to pick up all kinds of items, and souvenirs and things like that. And it does remind me that one of the purposes of the park, or national parks in general, is for the enjoyment of the people, right? So this sort of speaks to that, the comfort of the people. But after I took the shot, I was amazed how much liquor there was, and that surprised me. But that's one way people enjoy themselves in Yosemite. This is another way of quiet moment. That's Madame Curry up there in the painting. And I thought there was a little resemblance. One thing I learned about Yosemite is the seasonal working habits. So for example, this gentleman, what he's doing right here is he's got a long cable and he's chaining up and tying up or locking up those bicycles. But the exact spot where he's standing is also in the winter where they have the ice skating rink. So you'll have people who come out and work for the summer, and then they maybe take a break, and sometimes the same people come out and work in the winter, or just depending on their schedule. So. These are the dogwoods of Curry Village before they burst in the spring. There's drama in Yosemite. Let's talk about that. You know, when someone says you're going to do a project or a book on Yosemite, this is not the photo they expect to see, right? And I think that's part of the thing about it being Yosemite People. And things just happened. This lady was stopped, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rangers, and they are all armed. And the question is, what could she have possibly done to gain so much attention? You know, so I thought I need to take that shot. Now I can't say for sure, but I know that there was a reporting of shoplifting in the area. So who knows if it's related to that. Why am I showing you this picture? If you look very, very carefully, and I'm going to zoom in, there's a man in the tree cutting trees. You know, he's pruning them. And why would he do that? I'll step back. This particular group of trees was near one of the stables. And it was just another neat realization that there are people working in the park all the time for our enjoyment and for our safety. And one of the neat things I learned in observing the park so much was there's a lot of consideration for the visitor experience. You know, these people were very quiet, they're doing their work, and you would never have noticed them, almost camouflaged. And they're just making sure that, you know, the job is getting done. It's like this gentleman at the Wani Hotel. Beautiful place. Just a reminder, it's a 5-star hotel. You can go swimming, or you can plan your next hike in the great lobby there. Or relax when you come back, take off your shoes a little bit. There's a great fireplace there where you can enjoy some tea or hot chocolate. And this is right outside the Awani, just a reminder that they're watching us. I know we're looking for them, but they're watching us. Another hotel I didn't know about was the Wawona Hotel. I'm going to pause a little bit to talk about some of the changes in the park and some of the challenges I had on my project was the way the park is managed. There are concessions like the hotels and the gift shops and the stable rides, you know, the horse rides and all these sort of activities and the trams that are run by companies that the National Park Service and the government, they hire them. And they have 10-year contracts. And during this time of my project, the company that had the contract lost the contract. And on their way out, they claimed that the names of the places in the park were their copyright and their usage right and their ownership. So all of the places in Yosemite for a period during this lawsuit or during this contested, you know, time had to be changed. So this was the Wawona Hotel, and it became the Big Trees Lodge. And the Awani Hotel was renamed the Majestic Hotel, and these kinds of changes. Anyway, this is a flag raising ceremony they have every morning at the Wawona Hotel, and everything's back to its original name. And they whistle the national anthem. I think it's at 8 o'clock every morning. And here's a shot at, I don't know, 5:30 in the morning. And the same practical spot in July. You know, and this is, you couldn't get more Americana than the Wawona Hotel on 4th of July. You know, they got the checkered tablecloths and the pies, and there's probably a guy playing banjo somewhere, and they've got barbecue. It's a really great experience if you get a chance. And there's a boy at the hotel, and I thought, where are his parents? That knife seems kind of big, but that's what he was doing. This is a gentleman I met. His name is Walker Vick, and he managed the stables in the High Sierras portion of the Yosemite National Park. I was really impressed with him. This was a day where they were taking the horses and mules out to pasture to set them out for the season. Now, the gentleman you're watching here, the three handling the horses or mules, they're very experienced, and they started to have trouble with these two. And Walker Vick walked out there and handled it masterfully. It's just really neat to see really capable wranglers. And this was a wrangler who I met. Her name was Kate. Why did I photograph her? She was just cleaning up the stable from a big wedding they had the night before. And I said, wow, is this a common thing? Is this, you know, something that people can rent out for weddings? And she goes, no, no, no. This was one of our own. And I believe it might have been her stepfather. I don't recall. But she said, this was one of our own. We had a wedding here last night, and it was just a private thing amongst the wranglers. And I said, oh, wow. So can I take your picture? Which I never do. I never ask, for a portrait. And I took it, and it struck up a conversation with her. And it turns out Kate is a photographer, and not just sort of a hobbyist, but she was sort of born and raised in the area, and she went to Brooks College in Santa Barbara to study photography. And she's actually a wedding photographer in the park. That's her profession. She's very good, but she's also a cowgirl, and she's been wrangling and riding horses and packing mules her whole life in Yosemite. So it's a really neat thing to see. And I showed her this picture. And she said, oh, that's Justin. I said, how can you tell? He's so far away. She goes, oh, we can tell by his hat. We can tell, we know everybody by their hat. No problem. And Justin's leading a mule train, and these mules, they pack the mules and they take provisions to the different campsites in the High Sierras that people can hike. They can hike the loop around it and make reservations. And I was able to visit one of those campsites. More stable life. These are people enjoying all that hard work that goes into those great experiences. And this is J.R. Garris. He is the manager of all of the stables. And this is a rare exception where I said I wouldn't have special access. And he allowed me to come in and photograph his workshop where he mends the saddles and, prepares all the leather work for the crew. And they have, I think, 200 horses and mules and a huge staff of people he has to train. So from a management standpoint, he's very revered, and sadly, he was let go during the concession switch. And sadly, the stable rides in Yosemite Valley were halted after 80 years, and that tradition is gone right now. So I know he's doing well. I know he moved on, I think, to the Sequoias or maybe Sequoia National Park. But the reason I accepted his access was because it really wasn't special access. Anybody who asked JR, could I, can I see your studio? He would let them in. So sometimes you just have to ask. And he was hanging a bag over his office. I said, JR, you got to explain this one. What is this? He said, well, this is meant to hang, and it's supposed to be like a hornet's nest. So what's that for? He goes, well, because we have a lot of flies because of the stables and the horses, and it wards off flies. I said, wow, does this really work? He said, well, it didn't work for the first couple of weeks, but now it seems to be doing okay. So they said they left it. Now, you may not recognize this monument, but it goes along this wall, where I think this boy is seeing for the very first time perhaps one of the most famous views in America, which is Tunnel View. And very epic and enjoyed by all. And amazingly, one of the first things you can see when you travel to Yosemite, right outside the tunnel. And I try to explore a little bit. Sometimes it's really crowded. Sometimes you'll get in between the tourism and you'll get a moment to yourself at Tunnel View, which is pretty exciting. And sometimes you can get a moment with a friend. I thought this was interesting. There are people working, and this are surveyors, and that equipment was a laser scanner that scans the inside of the tunnel from Tunnel View. And I said, why are you measuring it all? They said, well, remarkably, when the trucks come through, some trucks still hit sides of the tunnel on the way in. So they have to measure it all, and then they're going to chip away some of those areas still that are problematic. So rangers doing the Valley Floor tour. It's a 2-hour tour. And frankly, it's one of the things I recommend. If you go to Yosemite and you only have one day, this is one of the things I would do, because you actually do see a lot and it's really pleasant if the weather's right. Why not? Half Dome. Now, one of the reasons I was interested in Zion and Yosemite and things like that was I was a Lithuanian Boy Scout. I grew up hiking all over Southern California and the Sierras and things like that. And so I really enjoy hiking. It's second nature to me. And people kept talking about Half Dome, and you know, you can't really do your project if you don't do a deep dive in Half Dome. So here we are. This is a photograph of Half Dome you typically won't see. It's not as identifiable shape. It's not, you know, very impressive, and it's because it's from the trail. And I thought I should climb it. So if you zoom in, you'll see that's a trail of people climbing up that, and that's 600 feet of steel cable. I don't know the exact angle, but it's very steep. There are 2x4s set along, I think, every 10 feet or so. You'll see them. And the truth is, if you fall, you will die. It is nothing soft to land on, no trees to grab. It's solid granite, and people do die. So it's exhilarating, to say the least. Gives you an idea, almost like a wall. Now that to preserve the or to maintain the traffic, they have some rules. You have to submit for a permit to go. I don't think it costs anything, but they're trying to limit the audience to 300 people a day, or the travelers. So they have the sign bolted to the side of onto the granite. It says, whoops, sorry. If a thunderstorm is anywhere on the horizon, do not pass beyond this sign. Lightning has struck Half Dome during every month of the year. You know. So you can imagine if this rock is wet and lightning strikes, it's a horrible situation. And they have a pile of gloves at the base. Why do they have that? It's because as you're climbing the cables, you must wear gloves, otherwise you'll shred up your hands, right? And so people will bring gloves for that purpose, but sometimes they'll buy them only for that purpose. So they'll leave them behind for somebody who maybe didn't bring gloves, or someone didn't realize, or someone forgot, and then they could pick from this pile, right? you know, and this comes to sort of the part of the project where I wasn't anticipating it. And I really started to see the impact of man on the park, right? So some people will look at this pile of gloves. It's like, oh, this is such a kind gesture, a way to pay forward, you know, a positive experience. Whereas someone else might say, well, look at this pile of trash at the base of this beautiful mountain, you know, or why do we have to drill holes and insert cables into this beautiful mountain? Or why do we have to, you know, drill holes and put in a plaque into this beautiful rock, you know? So, you know, on one hand, people want to enjoy it. On the other hand, people are disenchanted with this. And I just sort of present it as I see it. Right? This is part of that journey. And I saw all kinds of people, you know, young people, older people, out of shape people, in shape people. But at this point, to make it to this stage, you've hiked about 8 miles uphill, pretty steep, strenuous hike. And I risked my life to take this photo today. I met this gentleman, and he said he was doing this hike because he was terrified of heights, and he wanted to overcome his fear of heights. And I think he did. And this is the first person I saw. This was a 14-year-old girl at the top of Half Dome, and she ran it up, you know, just like a bunny rabbit. So I was jealous at her prowess. And people have all kinds of traditions and activities once you're at the top. One thing is there's no shade, you know, there's no trees. If it's hot, it's blazing hot. This person brought his own umbrella, and he had a little bottle of whiskey, and I asked him if that's his tradition, and he said something like he just likes whiskey. So, and this is on the other side of the top of Half Dome, and this person is looking for cell reception. I don't know if he found it. Trying to escape the heat. Very international crowd. I think, if I recall, this National Park surveys, about 10% of the visitors to Yosemite are international. And it is a nice rest after the hike. More High Sierras moments. This gentleman's fly fishing. You have to have a big sky photograph in Yosemite. A lot of people on their own. I think that was the greatest takeaway. You know, 5 million people come all to one spot to be alone, I think. So they all scatter once they get there and spend some time with family or with people they love, but they mostly want to be alone. This is Lake Tenaya, amazing beach there, the High Sierras. Back down in the valley in the river. Housekeeping camp. There's a lot of different ways you can camp. If you're lucky, you get a spot right on the river. He's got his way of folding laundry, and this is Ranger Ben, who's got his own way of folding a flag by himself. It's not so easy to do. There are bears in Yosemite. And this is Ranger Ben. I was lucky enough to take his walk and get to know Ranger Ben. And he has this walk where he walks around with the basket, and at the end of the walk, he pulls out this big bear hide, and he tells the story of Tank the bear. And that's the story of a bear he had to euthanize because it was hit by a car. So I asked him to share that story with me in the book. Kids in Yosemite, kids for a street photographer. Kids almost never let you down. Just a reminder that people live in Yosemite and they need their privacy and they play their games. I was invited to this game. I was just walking by and there was 18 people playing baseball and they were all living in Yosemite. What a way to spend your afternoon. The photographers doing whatever they got to do to get the shot. I can relate. Yosemite Falls, one of the highest waterfalls in the world. People don't want to miss out. This is at the base of the falls in the summer. You can climb up those rocks and go swimming. I didn't know it. Controversy. This is a portion of the show where I asked people, why is this the most controversial photo in the project or in the book? And the reason is, it's because there are people walking out in the meadow, and you're not supposed to walk out in the meadow. And people told me, maybe you don't want to put that photo in the book. It encourages, something that we're trying to discourage. And I said, well, this is what I observe, and I observe people walking in the meadow frequently, and that's how it is. This is the famous Jeffrey pine. It's a tree that Ansel Adams photographed in the, I think, late 60s, 70s. It's a couple thousand years old, I believe, and it died because of the reaction to the drought at the time. It's on Sentinel Dome. This is Hetch Hetchy. This is a giant dam a lot of people don't talk about that was built in another valley in Yosemite to collect water to help power the lights and energy in San Francisco. There's some controversy around that. That's, I guess, some practical matters as well. And contrails, I always thought, well, it's such a shame. What if I was visiting Yosemite and from Australia and I only had one day and I never got a natural look at Half Dome because of these trails? So that's another thing people talk about a little bit. Definitely, I observed it. And people can't resist leaving their marks sometimes. It's a fallen monarch. That's what this tree is called, the sequoia in the Mariposa Grove. I don't know why this one fell, but they had to remodel the whole, the whole grove because they were having rooting issues or issues with the roots, with the trails that were made. The asphalt was impeding the ability for these trees to get water. So they just renovated it and reopened it all. Sometime after a hike. And man and nature camping. This was an international visitor in the high Sierras looking down at this area, a little carved out area. Again, it's just something to consider. There's a parking lot there, so it's a trailhead. It used to be the trash area years ago where people would gather to watch the bears eat the trash, right? But another way to think of it is just a hole in the woods, and you wonder, did this need to be? But it is now. And there's romance in Yosemite. Rock climbers. There's a great photographer, Glenn Denny, who did a series in the 50s and 60s, and maybe edging into the 70s, of the rock climbing community in Yosemite. This is at the base of El Capitan, on the what they call the nose. And there's a person at what's called Camp 4 there, which is a camp where other rock climbers like to stay so they can be close to the rocks. The seasons changed. Now I extended my project to 2 years because the first year I was there, it didn't snow because there was a sort of a drought year. And I thought I can't do this project without snow. So I came back and I had some luck. And I was at Badger Pass where they have skiing. One of the first, I think, ski resorts, especially really good for newcomers to skiing. Might be the first ski spot in California. This gentleman's putting chains on. This is that same meadow we were talking about. The same idea. This is a golf course, the Wawona Hotel. And we end up in Curry Village where we started. Now, just in conclusion, I wanted to make a better book. So I thought, how can I make a better book? I'm going to include stories and interviews from people who contributed, to whom have a connection to the park. And I met people along the way, and I thought, if I do this book, that would make it a richer experience. So here's an example. There's no end to the beauty here and no limit to the scale of it. Jessica Kennedy. Jessica was a student right out of school who moved across country from the East Coast and lived in Yosemite to be a writer. And I thought, well, she should write something. And she wrote her experiences as a young woman at Yosemite National Park. Afternoons were spent running all over the woods as in Pocahontas, and then singing until a bird landed on my fingertip as in Snow White. Orlando Soria. Orlando was the son of the dentist who was raised in Yosemite, and he wanted to leave to explore the world, but he also wanted to stay, because he's living in paradise. So he writes about that. Teresa Ho, in less than an hour from the time the call went out, I'd been cared for, packaged, and transported by helicopter back to the valley. Oops. Teresa Ho. Teresa Ho was a marketing manager who lived there 10 years. She went on a hike with her husband, slipped, a rock crushed her and broke her back. And her husband had to run to get help, and they helicoptered her out of there, and she survived to tell the story, and she's all better now, but it was a pretty harrowing experience. A great worker enjoys what they do, which shows in their work. 90% of a job is showing up on time. The rest will fall into place. So I interviewed JR, and he talks about what is it like to live in Yosemite, but what is it like to manage cowboys and cowgirls? So it's a pretty great interview. Okay. So this is in conclusion. This is a ranger enacting or reacting the firefall. Back in the day, they used to drop embers from the High Sierras portion down to the valley, and people would sit in a parking lot or in the field, in the meadow, and picnic and drink and have a good time. And they would yell, "Let the fire fall, let the fire fall," and they would release the embers. Of course, it was probably not a good thing, you know, kind of maybe dangerous and potentially hazardous. So they stopped that tradition in 1968, but they still talk about it today. Okay. Hey, I want to thank Exhibit Envoy for helping produce this exhibit that is at the California Museum right now, and it travels nationally. And David was kind enough to invite me to come talk about it. And they did a great job packaging it as a website for everybody. And then I also want to give 1,000 thanks to David Burton for being such a great host, and infinity thanks to Grace Hudson Museum and Sun House. So I'm going to stop talking and start sharing more.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jonas. I hope everyone in the audience joins me in a virtual applause for Jonas and his presentation and the great work he's done. And maybe if you've got, I know it's pushing up against 1 o'clock, but we'll stay on a few more minutes for people who have questions. Keep an eye on the chat room as well. I didn't see any real questions during the course of your program, Jonas. Let me start off by asking you one, and I'm going to encourage anybody who has a question to open their mic up as well, and please feel free to ask. Jonas, how many photographs do you think you took in total over the course of the couple of years you worked on this, and then what were the number that you distilled it down to for the book and exhibition?
Well, I know I took close to 5,000, which, you know, in this digital world actually doesn't sound like a lot, but on film, you know, it adds up. The book itself has about 155, I believe. So I probably distilled it down to 200 to 300, and then did a lot of editing along the way, you know. So.
Yeah, I might add, this is what the book looks like, and it's oh, there you go. That's what the book looks like. That beautiful shot of Half Dome, very unusual. One of our guests today pointed out you just don't see people, photographers who take that kind of a shot with Half Dome upside down. Jonas, this is did you create a publishing company to produce the book yourself?
Yeah, you know, I had several mentors in publishing, and they said, I think that this is something you could do, Jonas. And what I did at the time is I started a Kickstarter campaign. And if anybody Googles Yosemite People Kickstarter, you'll see a little video there. And we raised more than $20,000 to put this through. You know, and it just gained momentum from there. I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out.
And if people, are there still copies available? If someone wanted to purchase one, how would one do that?
It's really tricky, David. You know, it was only one press. We had 750 books, and there are only like less than 100 left. Right now, sadly, because of COVID, they're leaving the distributor right now back to my warehouse. So, you know, if they went on Amazon, they might find 1 or 2 copies still. Otherwise, perhaps later they'll be in some gift shops and things like that.
Someone did ask a question in the chat room, Jonas. Did you do your own printing?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, typically I do. And so for the Kickstarter campaign, some of the rewards were small silver prints. I had my own darkroom and I would do some printing. But eventually for larger prints, I used a digital or, you know, archival prints, which I handled myself as well. So it just depends. But the project is so big that I couldn't do silver prints for the whole thing. I would need a benefactor just to do that because, you know, doing maybe 100 different images or something is a monumental task.
And is there a way for people now, if they saw an image in your book or in the exhibition online and said, "Boy, I would love to have that," is there a way, is there a way you could do that for somebody for a price?
Well, right now I couldn't because I'm traveling in Lithuania, but if they've contacted me through YosemitePeople.com, I have a project site, then maybe some arrangements could be made.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Right. Who's got a question out there? Anybody in the audience have a question for Jonas?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, my name's Tom Raymondson. I just wondered a little bit more about the technical aspects of your photography. What film do you use? How do you meter? Do you use the rangefinder or do you zone focus? Those kinds of things.
Okay, yeah, so from a photography standpoint. I used T-Max 400 film. It's a Kodak brand, right? I like that brand because it's a very crisp negative. I metered using the meter in my Leica camera. And typically, it's interesting when you're out there shooting because more often than not, you're metering. You probably meter 2 or 3 or 4 times and then take a shot. It just depends. So I'm constantly metering in the shadows before I take my shot. And people think I'm photographing something, and I'm not. And a lot of times I end up using that as sort of camouflage, and then take a shot later. Because you have to have. I think nowadays people are very much accustomed to. A focus that's immediate, or the digital camera adjusts to whatever light is out there, even if it's dark or nighttime. And I'm using a metering system within the camera. Also, I have a fast lens, which is a 2.0 f-stop. So it can work pretty well under low light conditions, and I use the 400 speed film because generally speaking, I want to be prepared when the sun goes down a little bit, or if it's a little bit early in the morning, if that makes sense, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jonas, did you develop your own film, or did you have somebody else process it?
No, because because of the volume, I didn't develop my own film. You would think because of the volume I would, right? But just from a time standpoint, I used a place called Sammy's Camera in Southern California. They're very respected in that area. But it depends on the project. Later, I did a project with 8x10 film for a couple of years, and I developed that all by myself. And I'm doing that here. And I did a wet plate collodion project where I made glass plate negatives in the Civil War era type of photography, where you're doing it on the spot as well. So it just depends on the project and what my time and resources are, or the limitations.
And Jonas, just so the audience is clear, you're not exclusively a photographer. You work in a variety of media of arts, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I practice all the historic printmaking processes, etching, lithography, silkscreen, woodcut, and all the alternative photo processes. And it's because I manage a printmaking studio one night a week at Art Center College of Design. I've been doing that for about 20 years. And I actually have a degree in illustration, so I do a lot of painting, oil painting, and things like that. So, and nowadays, because of the digital and the capture, the photography is turning a little bit into film for me too. So it just depends on the project.
Jonas, I also wanted to ask you, have you returned to Yosemite since you completed the Yosemite People project? Do you still go there?
Oh yeah, I've probably been 2 to 3 times a year, but I haven't been in some time, maybe a year and a half or so. The pandemic didn't help, so I haven't been in it quite some time.
Well, that's true.
But yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah.
And this will probably be the last question I want to ask you, but is there anything you can say about the project you're doing in Lithuania? You're going to be there for many, many months, I understand.
Yeah, well, I'm here for one. I'm here on a Fulbright award, and it's a one academic year. So because of the pandemic, that got switched around a bit, but I'll be here till October. And I'm exploring the Jewish community in Lithuania, the Litvak community, and you know, which is not easy to do during a pandemic, you know. But it used to be the center for Jewish culture in Europe. For example, I think the largest synagogue in Europe is in Lithuania. And, you know, since the World War II, so much has changed, and trying to find a way to honor this small but mighty colony that's persevering. So this might take in the form of photos, it might take paintings and drawings and interviews and scanning of ephemera. It's going to be very rich. So I hope that a year or two from now, I'll have something to report.
Okay, good. Oh, and actually, questions continue to pop into my head. I'm curious. You know, you've worked in a tradition of street photography, and I'm wondering if there are specific people who were influential in your desire to do street photography.
Yeah, you know, I just started doing street photography, not knowing I was a photographer. You know, one day I turned around and I saw I had a box full of negatives of thousands of pictures, and I realized these are all people I don't know. You know, it's not family photos. So, I attribute this to my parents, who are big champions of the arts, and it would introduce our family, you know, to different artists. And as a youngster, I was introduced to a photographer named Algimantas Kazys, who was a really interesting Lithuanian photographer who was a priest who left the priesthood to pursue his street photography, believe it or not. And he was published quite a bit by, I think, Loyola University Press. But I'm a big fan of all the classics like Kertész and Frank. And one of my favorites now is Saul Leiter, who was a master of color photography in the 50s and 60s that a lot of people are just now learning about. So.
Very good. Well, thanks for that. One last chance for anybody in the audience to ask a question. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for the day. And again, we're recording this program. We'll post it on our website within about a week or so. So tell your friends who weren't able to see it, or if you want to see it again, please feel free to go to our YouTube channel and check it out. Well, Jonas, I can't thank you enough for staying up late in Lithuania to join us today and provide many more insights about the Yosemite People project and the beautiful exhibition that, again, we have on the online version at the Grace Hudson Museum website. Thank you again, Jonas.
Thank you. My pleasure. Best of luck. Stay well.